always look at this post-90s cultural wasteland comparable to the fall of the Roman Empire.
Could be.
It's because it was kind of like those intermediate periods.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's a time of crisis, certainly.
I mean, as long as you remember, most civilizations tend to, at the longest, last about 1,000 years, but on average about 350.
I guess. Anyway,
And
by this, what was that?
yeah, and I'm saying, so technically, since we're only about, I think America's like 250 years old or something like that, we got like 100 years left, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Time will tell, but
yeah.
by the time of the third intermediate period, when Egypt was already a shadow of its former self, obviously, but the Nubians apparently revitalized it in one last spark for a short time, and after that, it seems Egypt got conquered by every major empire after that. The Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Muslims, and it's been an Islamic hellhole ever since.
I wouldn't put it. I wouldn't go quite that far.
Well, for the past few decades, anyway.
Egypt is definitely in a time of crisis now, and yeah, there's a role that religion plays in that. Certainly, I mean, the fact that the Arab Spring in Egypt didn't result in the election of an actual democratic government and just resulted in more chaos can certainly be at least partially attributed to voting along religious lines rather than political lines.
I mean, it wasn't bad in the 20th century, but now it's just kind of like that intermediate time, isn't it?
No, it was pretty rough in the 20th century too. It was pretty rough. I mean, it had a dictatorship for like
besides
years.
Besides World War II, anyway.
Well, you can also blame the U.S. government for that and their ever-increasing meddling in Egypt's political affairs.
Well, it's complicated. Camp David probably saved Egypt from just beating its military to death against the wall that is Israel. So that I mean the roughly $2 billion in aid that the U.S. provides to Egypt in exchange for their agreement to cease hostilities against Israel was doubly beneficial. Fighting a war against Israel was only something that Egyptian political leaders were doing because it was popular with their people. It was not a wise political move on their part. So having a reason to say we're not going to do that anymore and we're going to get paid for it, it's a pretty good deal. I think the Egyptians were very happy with it, actually.